in terms of keeping the team focused.
Interesting. What helped you to do that?
I think it was being able to ask better questions was one of the key things, not necessarily always trying to have the answer or the solution, but being able to ask questions that would help the team and getting people to ask questions as to what are the real issues, what are we trying to accomplish, how are we going to get there, and then building consensus on that and staying focused as to what that goal was once it was defined.
That really helps to define leadership in an entirely different way, as you're talking about it, Stephen. The leader not necessarily having to have the answer up his or her sleeve and just ready to deliver it in a way that's compelling, but the leader being in a position where he or she asks the right questions.
Correct. And one of the other things that worked out, one was a skill set that I was able to improve and to learn and develop, was almost a self-reflective process that we were able to bring to the teams and the groups that I was on, which was really self-evaluation and looking at how could we do things differently and how could we do things better rather than just continuously doing them the same way. What works and what didn't, and making changes off of that. And one of the things we never want to lose sight of is what are we really trying to accomplish? We are a mission-driven organization, and from that standpoint, we want to make sure that what we are doing, whether it is providing care or implementing a new performance management system, is in line with the mission and that we are aligned with that goal.
Do you think about your career differently or the possibilities that you have differently?
Sure. I think going into the action learning program and the development program, one of the things that we looked at and we were kind of prepped on is this is an opportunity to learn. This is not a guarantee that you're going to get the next job opening, but it's an opportunity for you to grow yourself and what are your motivations. So part of it was an acknowledgement to senior leadership as well as other managers within the organization that was saying, I individually want to grow, number one. Two, I would be interested in trying to advance in terms of career paths and things of that nature, and being able to define what that career path might look to senior leadership and having those types of meaningful conversations, as well as also developing a mentor or mentee relationship with someone at the senior leadership level and being able to see things through their eyes and being able to have some pretty frank and honest conversations about, okay, gut check, what do I need to do? What am I doing right? What am I not doing right? And then getting a sense for what is it that they do that makes them successful in being able to ask the right questions instead of being able to provide the right answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. And now I'd like to hear from Lee Murphy and Kim Anderson, who were participants in this year's program. Lee is a physician relations liaison at Franciscan Health Systems. Lee, could you explain for us really quickly what a physician's relations liaison does?
Basically, my role is to get out and interface with the physician community and do outreach to ensure that we are the healthcare entity of choice for his or her patients.
Tell us now, you were part of this action learning program, and tell us what you got out of it.
I'll tell you, I got a lot more out of it than I initially thought I was bargaining for. Mm-hmm. It was quite a challenging process, and one that definitely, I think, for all of us who were involved, pushed the envelope a little bit about, where our comfort zone is and isn't. And both professionally and personally, I gained a lot from the experience, and that was a pleasant surprise as well.
Well, we're talking about, as you suggest, we're talking about that place where the personal and professional come together. And tell me what you realized about yourself.
Well, I realized that you never stop learning, and you never quite realize who you think you are. I think that was the biggest surprise for me, was we all have an inkling of what we think our strengths and weaknesses are, but this process, as I said, really sort of pushed the envelope and made me certainly open my eyes to realize, wow, I never realized I had that in me, or wow, I thought I was pretty comfortable with that, but perhaps I'm not. I guess my biggest aha moment or area was I thought I had a pretty good sense of what it meant to be a team player, always in that setting. And the essence of the program is that it's a team situation in order to resolve or solve a problem. And I realized I was quite impatient with that process because I saw an end goal, wanted to get there, and did not think it was going to be that hard to get there with 8 other members on the same team. And we all brought very different core skill sets to the mix. And so getting from, wanting to get from point A to point B and realizing the journey getting there was actually where I was doing the most learning. That was my biggest aha moment.
Well, I can see where that would happen, particularly in the world you're living in, where, as you said, every day is different, and you're often dealing with a lot of snap judgments, a lot of
Right.
trusting each other, and then to be able to step back and for a process to take a lot longer. The notion of that patience is actually something you had to find in yourself on another level.
Right, and that was one of my core skills that I thought I brought to the table as a strength, in that having worked with small and large teams, that I'm a very patient person. But in this mix of being given this project to solve or this task to complete, the dichotomy of the two didn't quite go hand in hand. And so I really learned that while I am patient, when it comes to what I'm used to, which is this is the problem, go solve it, and then having to really maximize the strengths of everybody at the table to get to that point, that was a whole different level of patience.
How has that changed the way you work?
It definitely has changed my speed of judgment, my speed of trust, my really reflecting on what it is that is trying to be accomplished or the goal at hand, as opposed to just thinking, this is the problem, I have the solution, I know how to get there, and really making me pause, take a breath, and garner the trust and respect and opinions of others in the room, and thinking that, there might be a different way to get there, and it may not necessarily be the one that I originally thought of.
That's great. Thank you. We're going to be talking now with Kim Anderson, the clinical manager at Franciscan Health Systems. Thanks for taking a few moments to talk with us here, Kim.
You're welcome.
Share with us, if you would, first, as a clinical manager, what you do at Franciscan.
I'm the clinical manager of a 37-bed unit, and I have 95 employees. And so I work a lot of long hours, and I hire and fire and deal with employee issues as they come up, and work right on the unit where the patients are.
Well, that's enormous responsibilities. After the Action Learning Program, you went into this new position.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay. So how did that prepare you for this new position?
That's a good question. I think that it was so intense and there was so much to do. It helped me and hindered me at the same time. It hindered me because there was so much work to do as part of the Action Learning Program, and there's a lot of work to do as a new manager. But it helped me in terms of, I think, there are natural leaders out there, and I think the reason that I was put into given the responsibility of 95 employees is because I am a natural leader. But one of the things I learned is that you can't really sort of tap dance on what you've done for your whole career, that you really get pushed to learn more about yourself and learn to be a better leader.
What did you learn in particular that you were able to take into this new position and may have helped you start in a way that perhaps you wouldn't have otherwise?
One of the biggest things I learned was to sit back and listen a bit and ask questions instead of always assuming that I immediately have the answer. Especially when time is short, you need to get to the answer quickly. You don't have time to sort of sit back. And so it was really interesting to learn that skill, to be able to take, maybe it's just a few seconds or maybe it's a few minutes, just to sit and listen and then ask the question. Because if you ask the right question, you're going to get to the appropriate final answer more quickly than if you jump in and just think that you know the way to go. And I think another big thing that I learned, too, in terms of that is that I will never lead a meeting in the same way again. I'm completely changed in that process.
Now how do you lead a meeting?
Well, I think I lead a meeting by asking questions and right off the bat figuring out what's our goal, why are we here, instead of here's our list of things to talk about, let's talk about them and check them off. We need to figure out as a group what our goal is before we can even start.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has just been excellent, very, very insightful. Hearing the perspectives of high-potential people who've actually gone through the process, what it does is it gives me a sense of how an organization should be looking at individuals, not just where they are right now, but if they have the potential to move up. And Franciscan implemented the action learning approach, Eileen, and I know you also talked about other ways that an organization can do this, such as a 360 evaluation, the in-depth the insights that come from the in-depth personality assessment, the Caliper profile, as well as coaching. Can you help us understand what this all means? In other words, if I were a manager looking at someone, what qualities might I have my eye on, and what qualities or accomplishments might I want to emphasize?
Well, I think we should really talk about it at two different levels. Let's say we're looking at individual contributors moving into managerial positions. They're performing very well in their role, so you already know that they have the knowledge and the skills required for that functional area. So now you ask, can they manage a team of people? In this new role, they're going to have to be, they're going to have people reporting to him or her. So are they going to be effective at communicating their expectations, providing direction, fostering teamwork if we work in teams, and developing their people? Are they going to be effective not just at independently making decisions about their own area of expertise, but are they going to be able to engage in a decision-making process that includes other people and achieve consensus in terms of making decisions? Are they going to be able to communicate difficult information in a way that people can still accept, even if they don't like it? So those are some of the questions you want to ask yourself.
Well, once you've asked those questions and figured out what you really need, what steps can you then take to utilize a development plan for that person?
Well, one of the things we typically do first is a personality assessment and ask, do they have the personality traits that are likely to drive those behaviors? For example, are they assertive? Do they have an appropriate level of empathy? Do they have enough resilience to withstand difficult situations? Because you're certainly going to face that in management. Are they flexible enough to be inclusive in their decision-making processes? We heard, Kim and Steve and Lee talk about decision-making is an inclusive process at a managerial level. How are they likely to make decisions? What's their sense of urgency? And what is that relative to what we're looking for in the way we want decisions made in our organization? From a 360 standpoint, you could ask other people who know this person, such as their supervisors or their peers, like Joyce was talking about, how does this person do at these different types of behaviors? And certainly when you're doing that, you want to make sure that the person is engaged in that process. I wouldn't want you going around and asking my colleagues and my boss about me without me knowing about it. And I'd certainly like to be a part of that process, because you don't want me set up, or just set up a situation where people are allowed to tell tales out of school, so to speak. It's intended to be developmental, so you really want to make sure you openly communicate that your intention is to help this person develop. They're going to be the first person to get this feedback, and from that feedback, we're going to help them develop a plan for their future, rather than doing it in a backhanded way that can, sometimes cause problems, get ugly, down the road, not just for that individual, for the organization, cause you difficulty.
Now, those are some excellent things you touched on, Eileen. So it seems to be more about the transition to a different role in terms of managing people, rather than just doing the job that they're used to doing.
Oh, that's absolutely right. And that's the case in many senior executive leadership positions. You have to ask, is this person going to be able to make the transition from being, quote unquote, in the trenches with their team to being a little bit more distant and having to function at that level? In a senior leadership, executive leadership role, you also may be more outward facing. You have to represent the company and the community. And so you want to take a look at whether or not they've demonstrated interest in those types of things in the past, and how have they done. And you may be looking from a personality standpoint at a higher level of abstract reasoning, for example, maybe more creativity, more of a willingness to take risks, so definitely more strategic level thinking. You also, interestingly enough, may be looking for a lower level of accommodation, because at that senior level, it's not necessarily about being the most helpful or cooperative person, although that would be nice. You really have to be less concerned with what other people think and feel about you. You still want the empathy to be aware of it so that you can manage those things, but you don't want it to stop you from doing what you think is right for the organization. Now, of course, these are certainly generalizations that vary from organization to organization, but, thinking about what you need at that level, and then when you assess individuals or people for, future potential, you're seeing whether or not they have the personality that's likely to drive the kinds of behaviors you're looking for, even if you haven't seen them or they maybe haven't had the opportunity to demonstrate them before, because